Gunned down 25 tourists in Jammu and Kashmir's Pahalgam. The manhunt for the suspects continues. Indian Army said Pakistan violated ceasefire at the LOC for the 8th consecutive day. US Vice President J.D. Vance says India must respond to the terrorist attack in a way that avoids broader conflict in the region. Speaking to Fox News, Vance urged Pakistan to cooperate with India to hunt down and deal with terrorists operating in their territory. The comments echoed US Secretary of State Marco Rubio's plea to both India and Pakistan to de-escalate tensions. In a conversation with External Affairs Minister Subramaniam Jaishankar, Rubio reaffirmed the US commitment to cooperate with India's fight against terror. Defense ministers of India and the US also had a conversation about India's response. India's Defense Minister Rajnath Singh said his American counterpart Pete Hegseth said US supports India's right to defend itself. Joining me on the show is former diplomat SD Muni, who is also Professor Emeritus at JNU. Professor Muni, thank you very much for joining us on the program. Let me begin by asking you, do you see a coherent response from the US right now? Are they saying that, yes, we support your right to respond, but please exercise restraint?
Well, I think we should understand the nuance inherent in it. The nuance is that US supports us in fighting terrorism. US does not support us in fighting Pakistan. This is precisely the difference between the two. And if I may underline that this has been a traditional approach of the US to ensure that India and Pakistan do not fight with each other. And if there is a chance, they are always willing to mediate. This is traditionally so since the 50s. But even President Trump, after his victory in the second term, made it very clear that he would be very happy to mediate in the conflict. And as you know, that he wants to project himself as a peace president and has already started mediating in two other conflicts, which is Gaza-Israel on the one hand and Ukraine-Russia on the other hand. So I think this is a very nuanced policy on the part of the US to publicly say that we stand with India and we want India to we would support India fighting for its own defense against terrorism, but they do not want a regional conflict. And they have said so in so many words. Vice President Vance has said so, Secretary of State has said so, and I think even the Defense Secretary, while talking to our Defense Minister Rajnath Singh ji, must have conveyed the same feeling.
Right. So, Professor Muni, you're saying that here the US is aware, and probably we may have even conveyed to the United States, and that's what seemed from J.D. Vance's statement, that there is going to be a calibrated response, because J.D. Vance categorically said, we only hope that India's response does not in any way lead to a regional conflict, a broader regional conflict. So do you believe that by now, as part of the larger exercise to look at our options, India may have conveyed that it has a right to respond, and the US has accepted that?
Well, that's what it is, and I don't really understand. Firstly, I'm not quite privy to what exactly the objectives of us in this eyeball-to-eyeball situation with Pakistan is. Do we want to eliminate the terrorism and terrorist hubs in Pakistan? Do we want to cripple the Pakistan army, which is really behind it? Or do we want to see that Pakistan state is brought to its senses, or all of them? Now, that much depends upon it. Let me recall again what the Americans did vis-a-vis the US when the 9/11 question was involved. They wanted to take Osama, they wanted to get out of Afghanistan, and to prepare legitimacy for that, it was necessary for them to show a major achievement. And that major achievement came as taking out Osama. And have no mistake, in taking out Osama, the ISI of Pakistan collaborated with the CIA. They knew how this operation will be carried out, and that's why the whole operation by and large was very smooth, despite some of the contrary claims that the Americans came quietly and did this job. So I don't know if that kind of a message is being sent that, look, Pakistan must cooperate with India in handing over some of the key terrorists, or India is thinking of taking a kind of an operation where people like Hafiz Saeed or other terrorists which are involved are taken off, because these people have now been hidden and replaced into, I understand, army cantonment areas and are quite well defended. So it creates a dilemma for India. It also creates a dilemma for India because diplomatically, while we are seeking international support for us, this is a kind of a truncated support, if at all, which is more rhetoric than real. No country has said it's not only the US. I would say even Saudi Arabia, even all other countries, European Union, UK, they have all said the same language, that we support you against terrorism, but please restrain yourself. Don't
Okay. Professor
open
Muni,
up, don't
my
escalate.
final question, right, my final question to you would be, how do you see India's current response? The Prime Minister's speech in Bihar last week was unusually strong. Now, there is a pattern, and that's why there is a general assumption that there will be a response. We saw that during Uri. We've seen that in Pulwama. And even now, there is belief that there will be some sort of cross-border operation or maybe a calibrated strike against terror camps. But this time, and the way you are seeing things proceed and the Indian government's actions, the Indian Army's exercises, the Air Force, Navy exercises, has anything changed in India's playbook right now?
Well, nothing has changed in India's favor, except that Pakistan is really under great kind of duress and stress, and they do not know what exact action India is going to take, and that's why they are going all over the world to tell other countries to please intervene and ensure that India does not take a major action, military action against them. But creating pressure is a part of strategy. And you would recall that when attack on Parliament took place, even during Atal Bihari Vajpayee's government, we had put the forces on alert and created tremendous pressure on Pakistan for that. Similarly, all these exercises which are being done, I mean, on the Ganga Highway, we are taking Jaguars and all kind of fighter jets, which is only creating a pressure on Pakistan. This is not directly a war action as it is. And Pakistan also is preparing for it to retaliate. So what precisely is India having its objectives in this kind of a confrontation remains to be seen. None of us are privy to that. I think the
Absolutely,
Committee
sir.
on Cabinet Security will work it out. Defense Ministry will work it out.
Right, but clearly right now the strategy seems to be to keep the enemy, to keep Pakistan thinking and the world also confused about what the possible next steps would be. And of course, all of that will happen only at a time and place of our choosing. Thank you very much, Professor Muni, for joining us. It's been an excellent conversation that brings us to the end of News Center. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.